two writers, one just starting out, the other a bestseller. Join James Blatch and Mark Dawson and their amazing guests as they discuss how you can make a living telling stories. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Formula podcast with James and Mark, and we are going to be talking this week about collaboration. You collaborator. It does have a bit of a negative connotation, doesn't it, collaborator, after the war?
I suppose so. That is 60 years ago, though, James. I think we can probably we can reclaim the word now.
I think it's more than 60, but let's move on. Doing maths.
Always best.
Yeah, let's move on from the collaboration. Yes, we are talking about collaboration, something Mark's been into, but we're talking to two guys who are very well-known collaborators in the science fiction realm. Who knows which realm that is? And they've also written a book on it. So if you're struggling maybe to write a book by yourself, or you think it'd be more fun to write with somebody else, this is going to be definitely a good episode for you. And before then, it's time for us to do one of our occasional welcomes to our Patreon listeners. These are new subscribers who are supporting the Self-Publishing Formula podcast. As little as $1 an episode, you can do that at patreon.com/SPF podcast. And I want to say a very big welcome to Steve Turner from Macau in China, possibly our first Chinese subscriber. To Guinevere from Pembroke in North Carolina, to looks like Beaulieu. The J is it's either Billy Joe or Beaulieau, but there's no hyphen. And the surname is Link from St. Paul, one of the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Well, look, you tell me. It's Billijo.
I don't have the emails in front of me. Have you not been professional enough to clarify these before going on air again, James?
I'm
offending our Patreon subscribers again. I can't talk either. Dear me.
There you go. So I'll just carry on. Anyway, welcome from Minnesota, Beaulieu. Clive Weatherhead from New South Wales, Australia. Becky Embers, don't have a location for Becky, and Tracy Buchanan, who is This Author Can, is her handle, and also don't have a location for her. So welcome to all of you.
Now, one of those, James,
yes.
You probably didn't notice this in the Facebook group, but she was very excited of having you pronounce her name. And it was Guinevere, which we almost certainly both got that wrong, but her surname is Ramos. She is currently deployed to Afghanistan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she is. She's just signed up for the ads course. I think she's quite excited to jump into that. And yeah, she's with the army in Afghanistan, the US Army in Afghanistan.
Well, that's fantastic, Guinevere. We thank you for your service, and particularly thank you for listening. No, not particularly. We particularly thank you for your service, and as an aside, thank you for being part of the SPF community. Let's put that in perspective. Well, that's great. I think it must be Guinevere. I think that's correct pronunciation. It's not spelled the traditional Arthurian way.
It's Ramos. I think I asked, and she's Native American heritage, okay. And I think she married. I imagine with a surname like that, she married someone
South
Latino,
yes.
I guess. But yes. Anyway, Guinevere Ramos.
It is a good job I did them.
It is, yes.
Can't believe you were mocking me 30 seconds ago about that. Anyway, it's exciting to have you all supporting us. So thank you very much indeed. That's superb. And we're very close to our second book lab episode. That's in probably 3 or 4 weeks. I've just got 2 interviews left to do. That's one with Stuart Bache about the cover, and with Helena herself, Helena Harm, who is our selected person. And then we're going to move on to the next one, which we'll do at the autumn, I guess would be the right time to do that. I think I mentioned last week. No, I didn't mention last week. I did mention on one of our webinars, because somebody asked this question, that we have a double bill episode in the summer on children's books. Not writing them, but the all-important subject of how to sell your children's books. It's a question we get asked a lot, and we put 2 episodes together with 2 successful children's authors, and one of whom has written a book called How to Market and Sell Your Children's Book. And they're using social media platforms, particularly AMS ads, but also Facebook ads to do that. And there are some tricks of the trade to learn there. So that's coming up most likely in August. We've got actually quite a few things coming up because, of course, Mark and I are traveling soon, so we're going to pick up some great podcast interviews around the world. And Mark sent me my challenge of the heavyweights at Thriller Fest, if I can possibly do that. Good. So collaboration. Why don't we have a quick chat with you before we hear from Rhett and Steve, because this is something you got into. Now, I'm interested in this because you're obviously gone great guns with your writing career. At what point did you sit there and think, I think I need to collaborate? Did people approach you and say, I want to write some Milton books, or how did this all work?
Well, it was kind of inspired by Michael Anderle, actually. So he's kind of got collaboration down to a fine art. And I think next year, Michael is intending to publish 400 books next year, so more than one a day. So I have no idea how he's going to do that. So I'm looking forward to speaking to him to find that out. But I get asked a lot by readers who are keen for the next one in the series. And obviously I can only write so fast. So I'm reasonably fast. Not as fast as I used to be, but I can still do maybe 3 novels a year. I'm busy with other things now as well, things like this. But I I'd like to put out more content, but it has to be of a pretty high standard. I'm really quite particular about how good stuff with my name on it is. And I wouldn't be able to publish anything that I didn't feel was of acceptable quality. So I decided in the end, I would look into it. And I thought that a good way to start would be to approach authors who have been traditionally published before. Now, that's not for anyone complains. It's not to say that I don't think self-published writers are not as good as traditionally published writers, because I absolutely do not think that at all. But what this enabled me to do was to choose authors that have already been through 2 filters, which means I don't have to filter them quite so much myself. So these authors are all agented, first of all, and then they have been published, and some of them have been published very well. They've got good sales records and lots of reviews and all that kind of stuff. So that all being said, I've worked with 3 so far. Steve Kavanagh, who we've had on the podcast, and we will have on the podcast again to talk about this in a bit more detail. And Steve is currently killing it with his new book, a book called 13, which is doing really, really well, just been released. Michael Ridpath, who is an excellent writer of thrillers with a kind of a financial edge mostly, but with a little bit of detail as well. And that's gone down very well. And then finally with Scott Mariani, who is a Sunday Times bestselling thriller author with his Ben Hope series. So we work together, but they produce the first drafts. I then typically edit them quite heavily. And then they go through my usual editorial process of the beta readers, the advanced team, copy edit, proof edit. And pleasingly, my copy editor, Jen, couldn't tell the difference between Steve's book and my book, my writing. So that when I got that back was encouraging for me, that I knew we were onto something that should work quite well.
So in a way that's slightly different from the kind of side-by-side collaboration, chapter each, or even both writing the same chapter, but it's still a form of collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very different. It isn't. I'm not so heavily involved in the first draft. I am very heavily involved in the kind of second draft and the edit. And a book that Steve and I are working on right now, which I should have back, maybe even by the time this episode goes out. I think I will be very heavily involved in the second draft, because there's quite a cool development that we're going to be looking at with regards to how that's published. And I can't say any more than that at the moment, but it's quite an exciting one. So I want to make sure that is as good as we can both possibly make it.
Yeah. And we have covered the sort of more side-by-side collaboration before on the podcast. We had the Joe Penn train experience, which I think is happening again this year, Chicago to New Orleans, and they collaborated all the way down on that. And I'm just trying to find the book actually on Amazon, because I know it's out there.
It was called American Demon Hunter's Sacrifice, I think.
Wasn't it? Let me see if I can find that. Anyway, why don't you remind us about that?
Yeah, well, you kind of summed it up. I mean, there was 4 writers: Zach Bohannon, Lindsay Broker, Joe, and Jay Thorne, I think it was. He went down to New Orleans and had finished a novel pretty much by the time they left New Orleans. I think that's kind of taking collaboration to the next level with multiple authors. Another one that we've had on right back at the start of the podcast was Sean Platt, who works with Johnny and Dave in a model that's more like the one that I use. So Sean tends to be the editor, and the other guys who he works with produce the actual words. So that would be more like my model with my co-writers. But then we come to Rhett and the model that they use. So certainly lots of different ways to skin the cat.
Yeah, indeed. It was American Demon Hunter's Sacrifice by Bohannon, Baroka, Penn and Thorne. And we had Jay on to talk about that. So this is similar in that vein, but these are 2 people who write very closely together in the sci-fi world. They struck up a relationship, and you can tell from the interview straight away that the heart of the success of their partnership is the way they get on. It's quite a British kind of roasting type relationship. There's a lot of bants, as we say in Britain, which I think is...
we don't say it. Young people say it.
Young people say bants. And I was a little surprised, having spoken to them up to the interview, how far apart they live, and the fact that I think they have met in the real world, but that's really not necessary anymore. So let's hear from Rhett and Steve, and then Mark and I'll have a chat off the back. Here we go. Okay, we should let people into a secret that we have done this entire interview before, because we had a rare technical failure. But you know, the banter was so good, and you know, the back and forth, that we just decided we're going to do this all again, didn't we, guys?
We did.
Yeah, that'll be great.
And it's a Monday night, and I feel that I've got to have alcohol, which I don't normally on a Monday. I didn't really want this beer, but I have to have it because that's how we rock. You know, it's how we roll, right? When we the three of us get together. So, is that some sort of KFC ripoff, or is that?
It's Chick-fil-A. You guys don't have that.
We don't have Chick-fil-A, no.
No.
You guys are missing out.
Sounds like a really dodgy movie, but anyway. I'm sure it's kosher, or may or may not be kosher. I'm getting myself bogged down now. Okay, let's get on with this interview. We're going to talk about collaboration, and something that emerged in the last interview, I think, is the relationship between you guys. But we'll move on to that in a little bit, and we'll just start with the basics of why you're working together. But I think before we even get there, Rhett, why don't you start by telling me who you are, your background, and what sort of things you're writing?
I'm an architect by day, and I'm a science fiction and fantasy author. I'm the author of the Circuit trilogy with Diversion Books and the Titanborn series with Random House that's being released later this year. And I co-write with Steve on the Buried Goddess saga, and we have a whole bunch of other stuff coming up.
Okay, so traditionally published, but also doing a bit of
both right now. I'm more hybrid right now.
Okay, and Steve, what's your writing background?
Can I try to be a little more exciting than Rhett? Because his was kind of just like, this is what I do.
I've done it so many times.
Except when he started by saying that he was an architect by day, and then I thought he was going to be some kind of superhero by night.
Nothing by night. He's nothing by night. He sleeps at night.
No, I sleep.
That's about it. My writing career is pretty interesting. So I'm a pastor in Texas, and most of my writing up until this point has been nonfiction in the vein. You know, I write sermons, I write commentaries on scripture, things of that nature. About 2 years ago, I got back into my love of fiction, which I used to write when I was a lot younger, but I got back into my love of fiction, and mostly sci-fi fantasy. As a matter of fact, we talked about off air. We talked a little bit about some superhero stuff. Really, one of my passions is superhero writing. I run an anthology called Superheroes and Vile Villains. Worked together with about 45 other authors to create 4 volumes so far of that. Rhett was one of them at one point. I can't remember what volume were you. Were you in the first volume?
First Heroes volume. Yeah.
He had a great story called The Roach, The Rise of the Roach. The Roach Rises.
There you go.
The Roach Rises.
I stole from Batman.
Yeah, The Roach Rises. So he's a little bit of a superhero, I guess. Went on to write the Brother Dust, The Resurgence, which was kind of a superhero meets, it's the Avengers meets Star Wars kind of in a way. And currently, as Rhett said, we're working together on the Buried Goddess saga, which is an epic fantasy series. And there's a couple other things in the works that will hopefully be released this year or a little early next year. We've been sitting on them for a long time.
Or ever.
Any decade now. Okay, sounds like my book. So, Rhett, you're going along with your writing career. Are you looking for a writing partner?
I mean, I've always thought about it. I've always liked this idea of alternating writing chapters, especially after reading The Expanse and seeing how those guys kind of co-wrote that whole universe. I mean, it took off. It's a TV show and everything. So it always seemed like this cool romantic idea to me. I didn't know if I could do it, but you know, I'm glad that I found someone that I feel like I can write with, because it definitely isn't something you could probably do with anyone.
And how did you find each other?
So I started this, or helped start this science fiction platform called SciFi Bridge. sort of like an author co-op and a promotional platform. It's like a book club for sci-fi for readers, and otherwise it's a group where a bunch of us authors are together. And we needed a logo, and one of the other founders knew Steve. I don't remember how he knew Steve, but he was like, Steve does graphic design, so he'll do the logo. So he set me up with Steve, and we just started going back and forth and making the logo, and it kind of turned into a fun exercise where I would complain about something he did, and he'd change it or do something ridiculous in response to it. I mean, we wound up with a cool logo, and then from there, he was editing my stuff, I was reading some of his stuff, and I had a book that I really wasn't sure how to write because it was science fiction, but it was set in the 60s, and I really have only written space opera type science fiction, so I'm kind of making up my own world, not writing in our own grounded world. And I wanted something with a little more humor, and I have been writing darker science fiction stories. So after reading some of Steve's stuff, I thought he'd be good at adding that level of humor I wanted and helping me write in the present day. And it kind of took off from there.
So Steve, the relationship led into the collaboration, right? The two of you enjoyed each other's company, a little bit of banter going backwards and forwards.
Don't put words in my mouth. No. Come on. No
well,
way.
enjoy's a strong word, obviously.
Yeah,
but,
tolerate.
Yeah.
Tolerate.
Yeah, but nonetheless, the relationship that led to the collaboration, because some people will think you're a good fit for me because you write good detail stuff and I'm kind of the story guy, but they won't necessarily work well together. And for you, I think it seemed to be, and it still seems to be, that you enjoy each other's sort of sparring company, shall we say?
Yeah, I don't think it's smart to go into it with someone who's writing you without really knowing them.
I think the relationship started it. The relationship was fun. We got along pretty well. And as Rhett kind of alluded to, we were reading each other's stuff. And so we definitely knew. I always joke that, he desperately needed my help. But the reality is Rhett's a great storyteller, phenomenal storyteller, beyond anything that I ever believe I will be. But at the same time, I tend to be a more technical writer, I think would probably be the best way of wording that. And so I help in the technical areas. He helps in the story areas. I can write anything I'm told to write, but he's the one that really just excels in deepening a story beyond what I am generally capable of doing.
Okay, so I can see that there's, as it happens, as well as you getting on and enjoying writing together, there's a good synergy in terms of who leads what area. So, Rhett, are you the leader? This is a loaded question for the two of you sitting here, but do you take the lead on the story?
So, for our first book together, I definitely did, but mostly, that was my story that I had already started, that I just I brought Steve into it, let him read, kind of gave him all my ideas, we talked it out. So I think he personally felt like more of the secondary on that book, and that I had already started that series. With our fantasy series, the Buried Goddess Saga, it was sort of the opposite. Steve had started it and then brought me on. And I liked it. I think we both kind of worked pretty much 50-50 on that book, in that we're really alternating characters and how we write. So we're both kind of taking a lead on the different characters. And it's funny, he's the pastor, but I've taken the lead on writing our Holy Crusader Knight, and he's taking lead on writing the thief in the story, which it's just kind of ridiculous.
Obviously, you've got complicated alter egos, the two of you.
Yeah. So I think from an overall storytelling aspect, I might be taking lead in that I have more experience outlining and stuff and finishing full novels. But as far as where we are right now, we're pretty much doing 50-50 on everything.
In terms of... sorry, Steve, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the question actually lends itself. We did the whole last interview without even mentioning the book that we were kind of promoting. The question
We're
itself,
definitely going to mention it this time.
We have a nonfiction book out called what is it called? Two authors,
one book.
Co-writing Murder Free. And,
that's a really dodgy reference to call it that. Well, let's just park that reference for the moment and keep it clean, people. So you've got this non-fiction book. So we are going to move on to the book. It's a very important part of the interview that you are harnessing what's working in your collaboration and using that to teach other people. I think it's a really great thing. I definitely want to talk about that. But I'm interested at this stage in understanding how it works, Steve. So you feel that you've developed a little bit from perhaps somebody who wouldn't necessarily have led on the story because of the relationship you've got with Rhett now?
I think that I was alluding to the difference between kind of a primary and secondary writer, which is something that we talk about in the book. Rhett has taken primary on Luna Missile Crisis for the sake of the fact that he was the guy who came up with the idea. That's the 60s sci-fi thing. I came into it really fulfilling his vision of the book, taking kind of a character he'd already developed, and then I took it over. In the Buried Goddess saga, we really brainstormed. Of course, I came up with both of those characters too, but they evolved so much over the course of time with Rhett developmental editing things for me at the beginning stages that the relationship, I think, is what you're kind of asking. The relationship led to the comfortability. We got really comfortable, as you can tell, making fun of each other. It's super easy for me. We were talking today. I was editing one of his older books. I'm like, man, you've gotten better since then. It's just, we have a great relationship in the sense that neither of us seems to care if the other one tells them how awful something they wrote was, which I think is so beneficial. Yeah. In a writing relationship.
Really important. So it's interesting that you edit each other's books. So you've both got a bit of a background of editors, right?
So Steve is definitely the copy and line editor. I have done more developmental editing. So when he first started that fantasy series, and I think like the first 5 chapters or whatever, and he wanted me to take a look at it, and I was finishing another book while he was doing it, so I wasn't writing it. He was like, write this series with me. I was like, no, I need to finish this book. And then somehow I finished that book way faster than I expected. So after developmentally editing those first 5 chapters a ton of times and accidentally changing his whole story pretty much, we decided to kind of take it from there. And it went from what was really like a big, sprawling, epic fantasy type story to a more personal, character-focused story. Because just through developmental editing, that was kind of what I saw, that was the strength right there. He had these 2 really opposite characters who were going to have to work together. And that was, I thought, the brilliance of the idea. So I kind of jumped in and kind of lended my strength towards, I only really do character.
That's a big shift for a developmental editor to make to a book. But I guess you can only do that when it's partly your book, right? Yeah,
well, that was the shift in that. I was like, all right, let's do this together and like brainstorm where we could take what you have right now and kind of push it into a series. And so that's how we've done it. And we've kind of taken, I know I'll tell people they should outline. We've kind of taken a more pantsing approach to this book, sort of on purpose, because on the outside it is like your classic looking Dungeons and Dragons type fantasy, but we've really let the story go to crazy, unexpected places. And in a book that at most times is really lighthearted to some really dark places, I think it's kind of evolved. It's taken both of our strengths and put it into one fantasy series.
I mean, I think I asked you the first time we did this interview, I said to you, obviously you have to plot everything in advance, otherwise you can't work separately on the same book. And you both burst out laughing at that. So
we do that anyway. Yeah.
So because we do it and then it changes anyway. So, but that's just how neither of us are big outliner type writers. So we do it as much as we can. And I kind of force Steve to do it because I know he doesn't want to.
But how does that work, Steve? Let me ask you then. How does that work if you're not really on top of the structure and very clearly defined of who's doing what? How does that even work when 2 of you are writing? And we should say you're thousands of miles apart, right?
Yeah, 1,500 miles or so. The benefit of what we do, we're not taking a character we're not taking a book that's a single character and writing back and forth on it. We each have our own characters that we write. And generally they will meet up within the story. The whole first book, they more or less spend the entire book together. In books 2 and 3, they're apart for portions of it. And so during those times, we really have a lot of freedom to write our own thing, as long as it lines up with the narrative of the overall book. Rhett's writing a Holy Templar type character in the capital city, while I'm writing a thief that's out adventuring somewhere doing his thing. And, we're able to handle those things until they come together. And then when they come together, Rhett and I are talking. I think I've mentioned this the last interview. Man, we talk all day, every day. I usually wake up. He's an hour ahead of me. I usually wake up. There's a text from him. And generally, the last person I talk to at night is Rhett. It's not even my wife. My wife gets on my case because we talk more often than.
Well, they go to sleep so early, so that was not our fault.
I got 2 young kids, man. My wife's in bed, his wife's in bed, and we're still sitting around trying to talk about these books. And so, for us, our friendship has been instrumental in the sense that we're talking all day anyway. So if one of us has an idea for the book, it doesn't go longer than 10 minutes without the other person knowing about it. I can see in a writing relationship where the authors don't talk very often, I can see like one person writing something that just totally contradicts the other person's writing, and then you have issues. But we just never shut up, so we're constantly in contact with each other.
Yeah. So essentially, our outline is through hundreds of texts and Facebook messages.
Yeah.
If you're not going to talk a lot, I would suggest then developing a pretty robust outline beforehand. And I mean, we do the broad strokes of the narrative and kind of work our characters through that towards our end goal.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how you can get around the plotting side of things like that, and it's like a great friendship, really, because it's a friendship with a purpose. All right. I mean, if you were just friends, how often would you speak? But because you've got this stuff you do together, you enjoy each other's company. It's a good thing. I mean, I hope I haven't jinxed it by saying this. You have some terrible row tomorrow, everything falls apart. But I'm jealous of the man love that you guys have got going on. You bros, as I believe you say in the United States of America. Okay, look, let's talk about the book then that you've decided. Where did the idea come from? At some point, did you think, is this a sort of commercial? I mean, you can be honest, if this is a commercial venture, you thought we've got something here, we can tell the story and be entrepreneurial about it, or was this something kind of a burning desire that you've got to get into the nonfiction realm? I guess that's the same thing.
You could take that one.
I mentioned earlier that I do a lot of nonfiction writing, and hopefully this doesn't blow our whole cover here, but I could write a nonfiction book very, very quickly. And so I told Rhett one day, I said, man, why don't we write a nonfiction book about the process that we take, the hurdles that we've crossed, and the thing, potentially there's a lot of people out there that want to co-author a book that don't really know how to co-author a book. For me, it's been so beneficial to co-author because I have a very limited attention span. I get an idea for a book, I start writing it, 25,000, 30,000 words into it, I'm on to my next story, my next book. And that manuscript just ends up on a computer somewhere. Being in a co-authoring relationship, Rhett's going to be there going, well, what do you mean you're starting a new book? You can't start a new book. We have to finish this book. And so there's been a lot of hurdles that we've crossed, and we've seen a lot of benefits from co-authoring that we just thought, let's write this book. There was a lot of commercial. I mean, we decided this is a good way to make money. Let's not lie about it. I mean, it was an opportunity to make some money writing about something that we've experienced. And I think that's what any nonfiction book is in the end. We want to help other authors. We want to be able to make a little bit of money doing it. But really, Rhett and I love the other authors that we get to work with on a day-to-day basis with SciFi Bridge, Fantasy Bridge, and all that. And we're already answering questions like this all the time. So we figured, why not make an inexpensive route for them to just buy a short book that explains to them the process, and then if they have other questions, just go ahead and ask. But here's a whole book. Here's all the answers. See what comes out of it.
And that's you allude there, Steve, to keeping each other honest. Keeping each other on the track. And goodness me, that's a single outstanding advantage of working with somebody else, because if there's one thing not every writer, some writers I'm jealous of, they just sit down and work 7 hours a day and then stop, but I'm probably one of many people who find it's a struggle to get the word count done, to motivate myself to start, and if I haven't got several hours in front of me, I kind of don't want to even go there. But when there's somebody else, and I know what it's like in my business, that you're working together with somebody, you get on with it. I mean, that single thing is a really valuable thing, I think, to a writer out of a collaboration.
It sort of makes it a race, even though you're both going towards the same finish line. Like, I know Steve's way faster at writing than I am.
Right.
So I'll suddenly be 5,000 words behind him and have to, buckle down and catch up to him. Otherwise, especially if we're reaching a point where characters are going to come together, like we both need to be in that exact same moment on the same page. So keeping each other honest is great, especially if you're an ADD type writer like I am, where I could get distracted extremely easily.
Oh, there's a fly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Any kind of small distraction. Yeah, I know that.
Well, with Facebook's enough of a distraction as it is.
That's ruined everybody's lives, hasn't it? But it also allows us to sell books. We're going to come on to a little bit of marketing and stuff in a moment. But let me just keep on the non-fiction book. Just remind us what it's called.
2 authors, 1 book.
That's right. Yes. How could I forget that?
Co-writing, murder-free.
So far. Okay. So you've got the book out there. Do you have sort of web resources as well that go along with it?
Oh, that would have been so much smarter than anything. We don't have any. No. The book's the web resource.
Honestly, right now we've been so busy trying to hit a deadline for Audible. I'm amazed we even got this out.
Well, no, that's good. That's good. I was just checking there's somewhere people go, so people can go and find the book. I just want to make sure they can find the book and they don't have to go and sign up somewhere on your website.
Just go to Amazon, search either of our names, and it'll come up.
And you wrote this book in itself as a collaboration. So this presumably as a non-fiction book did require a little bit more structure and plotting than perhaps your fantasy books do.
Well, we got real passionate about doing it one weekend and kind of both wrote at the same time, which usually doesn't happen, but we were kind of going back and forth at the same time. I mean, I wrote 9,000 words on this in one day, which is my record by a lot. And the way we wrote it was we would each write a both section, a me section, and then a Steve section for each category to kind of give all the perspectives on each step we say that you should look into while you're co-writing. So it was a fun experience to do it like this, because we don't usually get to point out who's writing what in our fiction books, and that we kind of try to make it so you don't know who's writing what, so that everything's together to seem like one author. This was kind of doing all three. It was us making something smooth, like it's both of us, and then each of us writing our own portion.
It'd be interesting to see whether people can read the non-fiction book and then start to work out who writes what in the fantasy books. Because however closely you write together, there is a subtlety in people's voices. You could probably, obviously I wonder if you ever look back at some of your books and you work so closely together. Can you always work out who wrote what?
No.
I remember who wrote what, but I probably couldn't tell.
Okay.
I go through the process that we have with fiction books is, we write it together, and then Rhett does a read through and an edit, and then I do a final read through and an edit. And I do it for copy, I do it for line, I do it for flow of sentences, things of that nature. And so in the end, of course, it is a collaboration, and it looks different than if I would have written it alone, but it carries one voice because I am dissecting that book. Every single paragraph, I'm making it look like we wrote it with one voice. And, our wives have read our books, and I think I speak for at least two. I think my wife has no idea. Robin has no idea who wrote what.
Oh, she would have absolutely no idea. I mean, she hasn't read that many of my books,
well,
but
my wife.
Yeah. So she wasn't sure, but I think that's an important thing in picking someone to write with, is having opposite strengths.
Yeah.
And that if neither me or Steve could edit, then that wouldn't happen. We would need an editor to come in and smooth it together so it sounds like one voice. But we both come at it from different approaches, and we're able to work that out together without having to rely on someone else.
Although
that
is an option for people who want to write together and do have different voices, that an editor can come in and just make it a multi-stage. I mean, there's different ways of getting
there.
We
would suggest it for sure. If I didn't have an extensive background in editing, then there's no chance we would be releasing anything without having an editor go through it.
Yeah. No. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about marketing. So you say you're traditionally, I think you said HarperCollins, maybe Rhett at the beginning, trad published, but you're
Diversion Books and Random House.
Okay, and you're also indie publishing, and I know you're into audio books quite a lot. So do you do much of the marketing yourselves, the two of you?
Right now, we've been doing pretty much everything ourselves. I mean, I would beg anyone with a publisher to also do it themselves and not rely on them, like I did for probably too long. But as of right now, and like the last year, we've been pretty much running all of our own marketing, and especially in sci-fi, I do a ton of marketing for other people and for myself pretty much every day in SciFi Bridge, because we run promotions almost every other day for authors and giveaways and stuff. So, I mean, I'm doing it a lot right now. Steve would prefer to just write, but now I'm kind of beholden to a lot of authors to help them out with these platforms, which is great. And, that goes back to collaborating. Not writing in your own little hole is a really good idea. And other authors are marketing resources. Yes. If another author is going to share your book, that's free publicity. And if you're going to share theirs back, it's free for them. So it's beneficial to everybody to get out and meet authors that are writing the same sort of stuff.
Yeah, you've built a great platform there. We should just dwell on SciFi Bridge for a second, because there'll be writers in that genre now who maybe aren't a part of it. So tell us how it operates and what people get out of it.
So SciFi Bridge it's pretty much just a growing co-op of authors. I mean, we have some loose guidelines, which we don't really talk about publicly because we don't want to get millions of emails, but authors reach out, or I reach out to them and I invite them to this group. And once you're in it, we run promotions for you, everything totally free. And we run group giveaways, and we built our own lists that we promote to. And it's a pretty strong list. I mean, I don't know many lists as strong that don't cost a lot of money, like BookBub and such. But it kind of does everything. We've put out anthologies, Bridge Across the Stars, which has a forward from Kevin J. Anderson. So, I mean, we've met a lot of authors, and, I kind of help promote them. Even authors who you might not think need it, they get their promotion from somewhere. So we help those guys. We help emerging authors. So it's really grown in the last year into a big platform.
So how big is it? How big's your reader list? How big's your author list? Or if you're happy to say that?
We don't usually share our reader list because we go for a more active type list. So the overall number won't be that impressive, but the amount of sales we get is pretty impressive. I mean, we've gotten like 300 to 400 on someone's book when it's on sale, which for free and not BookBub there's not many things like that.
I mean, I can speak for myself. When we released Brother Dust, I mean, we sold more on opening weekend than with just SciFi Bridge pushing it than I think I probably expected to sell in the lifetime of the book. Wow. If it wasn't for SciFi Bridge pushing that book at the start, I don't know that it would have gone anywhere. And so I know for me personally, I saw the power, and that was almost when SciFi Bridge first started. So we've now had a year of snowball, and man, we have just seen people skyrocket to the top of the ranks because of a SciFi Bridge promotion. Yeah, so I'm not running it, so I can say
it's going pretty great. And I mean, we have Fantasy Bridge as well, which is growing a little slower. The fantasy readers seem tougher to reach on that subscriber list level
for sure.
And the sci-fi readers, who I think maybe are just more technically savvy or something. I'm not sure why there's a difference, but it's a pretty stark difference between the readerships. Well, because they're both there, and I mean, we're always growing.
The fantasy readers live in a world of leather-bound books with quills, and the sci-fi readers live with computers and spaceships. So obviously they're using the internet. That's obviously a massive generalization about readers. But so you have criteria for authors joining.
Yeah,
this is all very mysterious, a little bit secret, but you find them, they find you. I mean, people listening to this who write science fiction books.
There's a dark alley.
Can they join?
East side of Stanford.
Yeah, I mean,
is it a secret handshake or gang sign or something? Or?
I mean, they're free to join. We kind of have a rubric for like how much exposure or how big of an author we want you to be at this point.
Okay.
Because we do have so many people in it, and the strength of how we promote is we don't do like 10 books in one email. It's 1 or 2.
Okay.
We kind of really try to put the focus on them. So we are pretty picky about who we'll bring in. And I mean, I'll look through authors I know or have heard of, and I'll reach out to them often. And authors have reached out I mean, we had a Star Wars author reach out to us, which is pretty cool. And Maya Bonhoefs, and she's in the group. So we get people both ways, and we're open to anyone. But, you know, we have to just be picky because it's the nature of it is that no one makes money on this. Without our anthologies, we would be losing money. So that's kind of how it works. We're just here to help other authors at this point.
Okay.
Rhett knows every author by name. I mean, this dude is talking to me about people like they're the biggest thing in the world. I've never heard of them. And then I looked them up and they're like, you know, ranked 7 on Amazon. I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
So he's constantly reaching out to people. And so I would almost say like people don't even need to reach out to SciFi Bridge because if they fit the criteria, SciFi Bridge is probably.
They would have had this hand on the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
From the mysterious Brett.
Just weird hand signs, just crazy stuff in dark alleys.
And is it mainly indie authors or trad authors or a real mixture?
So we go for both. I will say that indie authors are more likely to join a group like this and do cross promotion. Most of the traditional authors who could even help our list grow or help anyone in it with like a social media presence or something probably don't need our help at all and wouldn't even answer. You know, like we could probably get a lot of mid-list traditional authors, but again, they're a lot of them aren't keeping lists or those kind of things right now. So it definitely is more indie. And if we have traditional people, and I mean, we have some big ones, they're hybrid. So they're more involved in the marketing end of things, like how I have been recently. Okay.
All right. Well, that was a really interesting area. We've become a little bit sidetracked from our main subject, but SciFi Bridge is obviously this beast that you're growing, and it's fascinating to sort of keep in touch with that as that grows. It sounds to me like the sort of thing that's going to take over your life at some point. And
it does.
yeah, I'm sure. You're a bit of a polymath, Rhett. And you guys, I mean, considering you're an architect during the day, I don't know what it is you design, but you have to pay attention when you're designing stuff. But where do you find the hours? Where do the two of you find? You're a pastor, Steve, as well. You've got a flock to look after, and the two of you are doing a lot of work here.
Is that a question? Well,
I guess it's just a statement. I'd like complete silence after it, please.
I mean, it's kind of the same answer as any. I mean, there's people doing all kinds of jobs that are finding time to write, and I think that if you're in, I think that's the thing, man. If you want to write, you're going to find the time to write.
Yeah.
We have some good friends that are police officers. I believe it's in Kansas, if I'm not mistaken. And they're posting pictures of themselves with coffee at 3 a.m. because they've gotten up to write. And I commented on there. I said, man, I hope my law enforcement officers sleep more than you do.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, people, if you want to write, you're going to find time to write. And we do. We stay up late. We get up early. We, forego lunch breaks, whatever it takes to write a couple of chapters, to write 100 words, even, whatever it takes.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it sounds like the relationship as we started this interview is something that keeps you going in all areas, like keeps you working, keeps you motivated, and ultimately produces, good pieces of work. So the book is going to be a great guide for people who are starting out, who want to collaborate. But the kind of X factor there is to find the person who you fit with, which is not necessarily somebody like you, but somebody who you complement.
And we talk about that. I mean, that's hard to quantify, the X factor type thing, but we mention it a lot. Like, this really becomes a friendship. I know Steve will say it's sort of like a marriage. of sorts. And you really have to learn to work together, learn to take criticism, which is big, learn to give back criticism. And if you're not working with someone you really enjoy working with, I mean, it's going to be tough, especially working this far apart where we have to talk a ton just to keep each other updated on what's going on in the story. Without a friendship, I don't even really know how you would do it. It sounds like it would get pretty rough.
Hard, rough.
Yeah, and then there would be almost no point in doing it because what is the point if it becomes a slog? And I wonder if maybe things are, this type of collaboration is becoming more common now. Obviously, writing and people knowing each other writing is exploding a bit at the moment because of the whole digital revolution. I think that maybe this is more, even in filmmaking, I think you see pairs. I mean, the Stranger Things brothers teams, and the Coen brothers, and there seems to be quite a few people who work together to produce things where in the past it's always been a single name. Or is it my making that up?
Well, I mean, I think that even if we go back in time, you'll see Steven Spielberg and George Lucas working together on Indiana Jones. You'll see Lennon McCartney writing, some of the greatest Beatles songs of all time.
Although they sort of wrote quite a lot separately as well, didn't they? I don't know how much.
They did. And I think that that's actually key as well, as, Rhett's doing his own writing at times. I'm doing my own writing at times. And then you kind of come together and arguably do some of your best work. And so I think that in the writing industry, it's becoming less taboo. For years, you had the Stephen Kings of the world that were all being kind of judged by one group of people to see if they were worthy of being published. Now anybody can write a book and create a fan base. And I think we even mentioned this at one point. They don't have to be phenomenal writers to create a fan base. And so imagine if you have two non-phenomenal writers, or you have them right here, and we're able to create twice the fan base by combining ourselves together. And in the end, my readers will then read Rhett's stuff, and Rhett's readers will then read my stuff, and our individual work will kind of explode as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great for two people with full-time jobs where we can produce a book a lot faster.
Yeah.
And again, that seems to be bigger now, is releasing books faster.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I'm in a full-time job and I'm trying to write my own book, it's going to take me like half a year right now because I'm not that fast. But together, in the last year, we've written almost 4 books. So it's kind of exponentially grown because we're able to push each other and fill in the blanks with someone else. You don't always feel like writing.
And that's
with the co-writer, the book goes on.
Yeah, I mean, again, bringing you back to that sort of keeping each other going, then that's an important commercial consideration. That's another edge that the collaboration gives you. Although you should temper that with the fact that you split the profits, right?
Yeah, but if you're used to being with a publisher like me, 50% is a lot better than like 20.
50% of 70% is a lot better than anything you get from a trad deal. Okay. Look, guys, thank you so much indeed for coming on to the SPF podcast. It's I hope I speak for the listeners as well. It's an infectious relationship that you guys have, and I think it's almost the human condition, isn't it? Finding that kind of soulmate who you want to spend some time with, and it's a good thing you found. You're channeling that into your books, and that's a great thing. So we wish you all the very best. We should again give a plug to the non-fiction book that was the entire point of the interview that none of us mentioned the first time we did this whole interview, which I still can't quite believe. But anyway, so Rhett, tell us where you can find the book. All good online book retailers.
Yeah, so it's 2 authors, 1 book, How to Co-Write Murder Free. You can find it on Amazon right now. It's only on Amazon. It's in Kindle Unlimited as well. Just search our names, Rhett Bruno or Steve Beaulieu, or however you pronounce his name.
You still can't pronounce his name. Wow.
It's weird.
Wow. That must hurt Steve a little bit.
I think it's Beaulieu.
Just call him Brett from now on.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good book. You'll learn the steps that we used. Good idea. We tell you how to co-write, who to co-write with, like based on what we've seen others do and what we've done ourselves. And I mean, I think all in all, writing can be a really lonely thing. So if you're feeling that way, writing with someone else is kind of a great way to keep things going and stay light about it instead of
absolutely
going into that dark tunnel.
And you know, for some writers who can't get themselves off the starting blocks, this could just be the key. To allow them to write, but to be in a relationship, a writing relationship with somebody else. So great, guys. Steve, Rhett, thank you so much indeed for joining us. Have a good rest of the day, and I'm going to go to bed because we live in the future in the United Kingdom, and that's how we roll. Okay, thanks, guys. So there you go. As you heard at the beginning, we did that entire interview once, and there was a very rare, in fact, I think this may be the only time it's happened, technical failure at my end. And so we had to do the whole interview again. But I was very grateful for them for doing that. And clearly, what comes across in that interview is their relationship allows them to work together all the time. I mean, both wives joke that they talk to each other more than they talk to their partners. They get up in the morning, they're just on speakerphone to each other, and the ideas flow between them. So they don't have, and it was interesting to me that they don't have a particularly orthodox structure to the way they're going to write together. They just always know what each other's doing just by that constant communication. That's one way of doing it, and it's fun. It seems like fun. And the other thing which strikes me as somebody who's getting a first book written is it keeps the book moving. When you've got two of you, it keeps the book moving.
Yeah, definitely. It is something to think about. I mean, you can obviously write faster if there's two people handling it, and motivation is a good one too. Writing can be a bit of a solitary thing, and if you don't have someone that is waiting for your words, so you've got a chapter to send over to them, and you know they're waiting for it, that can be pretty good in terms of just keeping your arse in seat, fingers on keyboard, and so you actually get that you can get over so that you meet your obligation to them. So yeah, it's something that is certainly worth thinking about if you're struggling to find the motivation to get something done. Yeah.
So when are we going to collaborate on our first book, Mark? Bookmark. That should have been your publishing company name.
Jesus, the people I have to work with. Let's take a rain check on that. We'll have a discussion. Perhaps
John Milton travels back in time to 1963, an RAF station where he becomes a Vulcan pilot. I've got it all worked out. I'm going to do. If I do the first draft.
Don't call us. Don't call me ever again.
I think we have a similar relationship to Rhett and Steve. Okay, look, thank you very much indeed. Thank you once again to our new Patreon listeners. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/SPF podcast. We've got lots of good stuff coming up in the next few weeks to keep you entertained, informed, and value driven during the summer months. So do stay with us for that. Unless, of course, you're in the Southern Hemisphere, in which case stay with us during the winter months in this crazy global world we live in. That's it. Mark, have a great week. And for everyone listening, have a good week writing and marketing. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Self-Publishing Formula podcast. Visit us at selfpublishingformula.com for more information, show notes, and links on today's topics. You can also sign up for our free video series on using Facebook ads to grow your mailing list. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.